Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. Today, we are continuing our ongoing coverage of the war between the Russian Federation and Ukraine. So, the big news coming out of the region currently is that the Ukrainians are claiming to have shot down two Russian aircraft, possibly over the Sea of Azov. Now, these two aircraft that the Ukrainians are reportedly saying that they have shot down are fairly significant systems. The first system is the A-50. This is a airborne early warning aircraft designed to track airborne targets over significant distance. The second aircraft that reportedly was shot down or damaged was an IL-22, a command and control aircraft also used by Russian forces. Now, the big question is how, if, and how were the Ukrainians able to bring down these two aircraft? So the Sea of Azov is in this locale here. If the Ukrainians were operating, let's say, S-300s and possibly even American PAC-2 Patriot missile batteries, those are the two systems that in theory would have the ability to shoot down a Russian aircraft over the Sea of Azov. The S-300s have longer range than the Patriot missile system. I would say the Patriot, in terms of probability of hit within its engagement envelope, is higher than an S-300. The PAC-2s, which have the longest range, the PAC-3s are really designed to bring down ballistic missiles and have a much shorter range, but those PAC-2s can hit targets out to about 99 miles, maybe 160 kilometers. So, in all probability, the Ukrainians are not deploying Patriot PAC-2 missile batteries that close to the front line. So if we look at, let's say hypothetically, Zaporizhia is where the launch point was, or near Zaporizhia, and out to over the Sea of Azov, that's 187 kilometers. Now, is it possible that a PAC-2 could actually engage an aircraft to that distance? It is. A lot of American technology that's reported in terms of, say, engagement ranges or speed and what have you are understated and underreported. And the reality is, could a Patriot PAC-2 hit a target out to 180, 190 kilometers? Possibly. Now, we do know that the S-300 and then kind of going into the S-400 family of missile systems, the Ukrainians do not possess the S-400. They only possess the S-300s, but that's not to say that the Ukrainians have the ability to upgrade and enhance some of these S-300 systems. So yes, an S-300 could hit a target over the Sea of Azov, especially if it's operating near Zaporizhia. Now, at the same time, the Russians are going to see this launch, especially if they're operating A-50 aircraft and other radar systems that are operating in Russian Novorossiya, operating in Zaporizhia, what have you, operating west and north of Mariupol, operating near the coastal city of Berdyansk. You would think that the Russians would see this inbound flight of surface-to-air missiles being launched at those two Russian aircraft. So I would say it would be a very low probability that the Ukrainians could launch an attack, a surface-to-air missile attack from within the confines of near Zaporizhia, north of Kharkiv, the city here, and successfully hit a Russian aircraft over the Sea of Azov. Not an easy thing to do. The next theory is that the Russians shot down their own aircraft by mistake. Now, I would say for the Russians, that would be worse. Shooting down one's own command and control aircraft over the Sea of Azov would indicate significant problems with friend or foe identifiers and the technology that encompasses. The whole red force, blue force technology to be able to identify one's friendly forces and not shoot at one's friendly forces is incredibly important in the modern battle space. And if, in fact, it was a Russian mistake in terms of bringing down its own aircraft, especially an A-50 and IL-22, as displayed here. This is a very large aircraft, very expensive aircraft. I believe the Russians have about a dozen of these, maybe less now. But again, not a good look, if in fact that is what happened. So we just don't know at this point. The third option would be some sort of air-to-air engagement. Now, the Ukrainians do not have the capability of launching, say, MiG-29s or Su-27s, flying them over what is essentially now Russian airspace, and engaging those aircraft over the Sea of Azov. Those Ukrainian MiG-29s or Su-27s would be shot down very quickly as they traveled over Russian-occupied areas towards the Sea of Azov. Now, what kind of aircraft could have shot down these two Russian aircraft? Well, they would be U.S. assets. It would have to be an F-22 or an F-35. In a deep penetration strike, such as this, in all probability, it would have to have been a U.S. F-22. Possibly operating, well, obviously not possibly, but most definitely operating from NATO airspace, and then engaging those Russian aircraft. So three possibilities. One, it was a missile from Ukraine, a ground-launched surface-to-air missile. I think that would be most probable. Next would be a serious error on the part of the Russians shooting down their own aircraft. Or three, a direct operation by the United States using plausible deniability in terms of saying, well, it was probably a Ukrainian surface-to-air missile, or the Russians shot down their own aircraft, a U.S. F-22 operating against Russian forces. Those are the three options. So that's where we set with that. We'll continue to watch and listen to what is being said. The Russians are kind of being quiet. The Ukrainians obviously are boasting that they shot down these two aircraft. So at the end of the day, history will ultimately validate what happened. Now, what else is happening? South of Kharkiv, the Robotyne salient. Now, this area here that you're looking at on the map, and I'll go over actually to the deployment map where you, the viewer, can see Ukrainian forces now operating in this salient, in this bulge. This was the extent of the Ukrainian counteroffensive. Remember that the Ukrainian goal, at minimum, was to drive down and seize control and or threaten Tokmak, this area here. Ultimately, the Ukrainian goal was to sever the land corridor from Crimea to the Russian Federation proper, including possibly seizing control of towns of Melitopol, obviously Tokmak, and possibly threatening Berdyansk. None of that happened. The counteroffensive failed, and the maximum extent of Ukrainian success was this bulge you see here now. Now this salient is being collapsed by Russian forces. The Russians are continuing to counterattack Ukrainian forces located in this bulge. Right now you have operating in this salient or bulge the 33rd Mechanized Brigade, the 118th Mechanized Brigade, the 117th Mechanized Brigade, the 14th Operational Brigade of the Ukrainian National Guard, the 82nd Air Mobile Brigade, 78th Air Assault Forces of the Ukrainian military. Again, these forces are being used as ground assault forces. The Ukrainians currently don't have an air mobility capability this close to the front line. And then finally, elements of the 1st Ukrainian Tank Brigade. So quite a few Ukrainian forces, 1, 2, 3, essentially 4, 5 plus Ukrainian brigades that have been committed to the defense of the Robotyne salient. Now this salient, as we have talked about, is now being collapsed by Russian forces. The Russians are continuing to counterattack at various points and possibly looking to split the actual salient from the center. So we're going to continue to watch this very, very closely. Very heavy fighting taking place both in the south and the west near Robotyne of this salient. Additionally, heavy fighting is taking place along the entire line of contact. We are seeing Russian forces counterattacking to the west and northwest of Marinka, this locale here. We are seeing Russian forces continuing to attack the Avdiivka pocket. Russian forces have entered the eastern suburbs of Avdiivka. They have broken through the main Ukrainian defensive belt to the south-southeast of Avdiivka. The Russian forces have now forced their way, and fighting is taking place just about in the northern suburbs of Avdiivka as well. So if you are a Ukrainian unit that is operating in central Avdiivka, you can hear to the north of you heavy fighting taking place, and you can also hear to the south by southeast of you heavy fighting taking place as well. At the same time, Russian forces have the ability to hit any target in the Avdiivka pocket with heavy artillery. So incredibly precarious situation for Ukrainian forces in the Avdiivka pocket. And then again, the Bakhmut sector. We are seeing elements of the Russian military to include various motorized rifle regiments, 4th Separate Motorized Rifle Brigade, attacking south by southeast of Bakhmut. And again, earlier the Ukrainians had been on the offensive in this area, and now it seems that the Russians are on the offensive all along the Bakhmut sector. Now these are not large maneuver operations. These entail heavy artillery attacks. Russian aviation attacks, and then supporting those attacks are Russian Spetsnaz, air mobile forces, airborne infantry, and a host of motorized rifle forces as well, attacking in smaller company-sized elements along the Bakhmut front. So heavy fighting continues and will continue for some time. The Ukrainians, as do the Russians, continue to take casualties. This is a vicious, protracted war that will probably go on for another 1 to 2 years until the Russian goal, probably sometime around 2025, in which we will start to see possibly large-scale Russian counteroffensive operations designed to conduct major breakthroughs along the line of contact and possibly destroy the Ukrainian military in the zone of operations. So that's where we set for today. We will have more to come. Thank you for joining us, and as always, have a good day.